They say time heals, but some wounds learn to breathe with you, walk with you, and settle inside your chest like a quiet fire. Eli didn't notice how many years had passed until that envelope arrived. It was thick, creamy white, with gold lining and embossed initials on the seal. He stood in the hallway staring at it for a while, like it was breathing. He already knew who it was from. There were names he hadn't said out loud in years, names like Thomas. The last time Eli saw him was in a train station cafe, drinking coffee neither of them could finish. They had spent almost a decade hiding behind inside jokes, hallway glances, and late-night calls with no last names. Thomas had always been clear. He was bisexual, but one day he'd want the normal path. The family, the house, the wife. Eli had said nothing then. He had only nodded, but he remembered how his throat tightened so hard. It felt like swallowing a rock. And now the invitation. He turned it over and read the embossed script. "We hope you'll join us to celebrate love." It didn't say wedding. It said celebrate love. His hands trembled. That night, Eli didn't sleep. He stayed at his desk, staring out the window. The streetlight flickered against the glass, and somewhere in the dark, he imagined Thomas, adjusting his tie, holding a woman's hand, laughing nervously in front of people who never knew what came before her. He didn't want to go, but something in him couldn't not go. He opened the wardrobe the next morning and pulled out a charcoal suit, the same one he wore the last time he ever held Thomas without hiding. It still smelled faintly of lavender detergent and rain. He reached for the smallest detail. He still owned a rainbow pin. Tiny, barely visible from afar. He clipped it to his lapel and whispered to his own reflection, "I'm not a secret anymore." The wedding was in a vineyard just outside the city. Elegant, white draped arches framed the outdoor aisle. Guests chatted with champagne flutes in hand, laughing, posing for photos. Eli stayed on the edge of it all, quiet, unnoticed. A familiar ache settled in his chest like an old friend. Then he saw him, Thomas. Hair a little shorter now, suit better tailored, but still him. The same eyes, the same half smile. Thomas moved across the guests, shaking hands, hugging aunts. And then, just for a second, their eyes met. Thomas froze. There was no wave, no smile, just a stillness so sharp it could cut air. Carolyn, the bride, radiant in white, approached Thomas from behind and gently touched his arm. He turned quickly, responding with a kiss to her forehead. But Eli had seen it. That pause, that flicker of breath, inside the preparation room, moments before the ceremony. Thomas stood in front of a mirror, fixing his tie, and in the mirror behind him, he saw Eli again, standing in the corner, watching quietly. They didn't speak. Thomas straightened his collar. Eli didn't move. The silence between them wasn't cold. It was something else, something older, deeper. A silence built from the weight of things never said and the weight of everything they used to be. The music began outside. The ceremony was about to start. Eli stepped out quietly, taking his seat in the last row. He wasn't there to disrupt. He was there to let go, or at least try. But even as the bride walked down the aisle and guests turned with smiles, Eli felt something shift in the air. Not because he wanted Thomas back, but because, in that moment, he realized he had never really left. If this story resonates with you, with the heartbreaks you never said out loud, with the love you once lived in shadows, don't forget to subscribe to Heart Story for more stories that speak the truth your heart still whispers. Caroline had always trusted her instincts, and from the very first moment she saw Eli at her wedding, something inside her stomach turned. He didn't look like just another guest. He wasn't family. He wasn't holding a gift. He stood at the very edge of the crowd, in a charcoal suit, with a small rainbow pin on his lapel, the kind of detail that whispered rather than shouted. When their eyes met across the garden, Eli didn't smile. He bowed his head slightly, respectfully. But Caroline saw something in that look. Not arrogance, Not disapproval, it was pain, familiar pain, the kind that doesn't belong to a stranger. Later that afternoon, during the tea reception before the ceremony, Caroline overheard someone laughing near the hors d'oeuvres table. One of Thomas's college friends had too much champagne and was telling a story from years ago. And then Thomas ditched all of us just to sit in the dorm stairwell, talking on the phone for hours. Everyone knew he had someone, but no one ever met him. We used to joke he was imaginary. Caroline asked gently, "Did he ever say who it was?" The friend shrugged. "No name, just someone special. Honestly, we thought it was a girl he wasn't allowed to date. Maybe someone older." That night, the words replayed in her head. Someone special. She knew Thomas had a past. She wasn't naive, but as she walked into the bridal suite to prepare for the ceremony, she noticed Thomas had left his phone behind. Curiosity tugged at her, but she didn't touch it. Instead, she opened the drawer in the side cabinet just to look for tissues. She didn't find tissues. She found an old envelope tucked beneath a tie clip. Inside, faded photos, two boys, arms around each other, mountain trails, a lakeside dock, a snapshot of a younger Thomas, with laughter in his eyes she hadn't seen in months. And there, in nearly every photo, was Eli. Not labeled, not hidden, just kept, held on to. Caroline placed the envelope back without a word. At the ceremony, when the guests stood to welcome her walk down the aisle, she felt her heart beating a little too fast. Not from nerves, from uncertainty. Thomas looked at her with a soft smile, but she saw it now. That same smile had been brighter in the pictures, warmer, freer. When the officiant asked if anyone had reason to speak now or forever hold their peace, no one spoke. Of course no one did. But in the back row, Eli did not look away. He didn't interrupt. He didn't object. He just bore witness. After the ceremony, Carolyn found herself walking alone through the garden, away from the noise. She needed air, needed silence. She didn't expect Eli to be there. He stood by a stone bench, staring at the string lights above. For a second, he looked like a ghost from a different life. She walked toward him, her heels silent in the grass. "You're Eli, aren't you?" she asked. He nodded once. "Yes." She studied his face. "You're not just a friend, are you?" Eli didn't answer. He didn't have to. Caroline sighed. Not angry, not bitter, just tired. "I knew it," she whispered. "Not in the beginning, but I know the way he looks when something is unfinished." Eli turned to her. "I'm not here to start anything. I didn't come to take him back." "I know," she said, "and I don't hate you." Her voice broke slightly. "I just wish I had been his first choice, not his safest." Carolyn looked down at her wedding ring, twisted it once, then walked away without another word. The party lights flickered gently in the trees above. Somewhere behind them, laughter echoed, glasses clinked, people danced. But in that small corner of the garden, two people had just uncovered a truth that couldn't be buried in photos or vows. And the wedding, though complete in ritual, no longer felt whole. The lights dimmed gently over the vineyard as twilight painted the sky in shades of amber and lavender. Inside the glass-ceilinged reception hall, laughter spilled like champagne, effortless and bright. Toasts had been made, cake had been cut, and now the band was preparing for the first dance. Eli stayed in the far corner, behind a large floral column. He wasn't supposed to be there. Not really. He hadn't planned to stay after the ceremony. He had meant to leave quietly, slip away before anyone noticed. But something held him in place. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe it was the feeling of watching a part of his soul be handed over to someone else. The MC's voice rang out over the microphone. And now a very special guest will share a song with us tonight. Someone who's been a friend to the groom for many years. Eli froze. Thomas hadn't said a word, hadn't even made eye contact since the ceremony. And yet, he had arranged this. People turned their heads, looking around. A few polite claps, Then Thomas stood and walked slowly toward the stage, stopping just beside the piano. He glanced at Eli. Just once. A silent question. And Eli, against every instinct to protect himself, stood up. He walked to the stage as if in a dream, heart pounding with every step. The pianist adjusted his bench. The microphone stood waiting. Eli took a breath and began to sing. It wasn't a famous song. It wasn't a love ballad. It was the song they had written together, years ago, during a summer camping trip by a quiet lake. A song about pine trees and early mornings, about two boys dreaming of a wooden cabin, a garden, and a place where they could be exactly who they were. No masks, no shame. Eli's voice trembled slightly on the first line. But by the second verse, it settled, low, steady, and full of something that couldn't be fake truth. The room fell silent. Even the staff stopped moving. Guests who had never met Eli now listened with held breath, unsure why this simple melody made their hearts ache. At the head table, Carolyn didn't speak. She didn't cry loudly. She just folded her napkin slowly, pressing it between her fingers. The corners of her mouth tightened. She knew now, beyond doubt, that she was not Thomas's first home. She had only arrived after something sacred had already been buried. Thomas stood completely still, his hands at his sides. His eyes never left Eli. The song ended on a final minor chord, unresolved, unfinished, just like them. When Eli stepped down, there were no claps at first, just a heavy hush, then scattered applause, and then more. A standing ovation from strangers who didn't understand the language of the song, but recognized the weight behind every word. Eli didn't bow. He walked off stage, past Thomas, past the band, past the open doors, back into the night air. He sat outside alone on a stone bench, hands folded between his knees, staring into the distance. The stars above were starting to emerge. Footsteps approached. He didn't look up. It was Carolyn. She didn't sit beside him. She simply stood there. Then, quietly, she asked, "Was that the cabin in your song, the one with the green roof and blue shutters?" Eli nodded slowly. "Yes, we designed it in a notebook when we were 19. Carolyn exhaled. "I hope it was beautiful." "It was," Eli said. "But it was never real." She paused, then turned back toward the reception hall. "I think," she whispered, "some dreams are too honest to survive real life." And with that, she walked away, leaving Eli under the stars, the music fading behind him, and a silence in his chest that neither applause nor closure could ever fill. 6 years had passed since the wedding. Eli now lived on the edge of a quiet town, in a modest house with ivy crawling up one side. The garden was overgrown. The kitchen always smelled like coffee and dusted cinnamon. He rarely left the house, not because he was hiding, but because he no longer knew where to go. He had removed himself from most things: social media, mutual friends, city events. He declined every invitation, every holiday dinner, every birthday reminder. People eventually stopped asking. He worked from home, translating documents and audio files, things that required silence, things that didn't ask who he was or why he seemed to disappear after that summer. Every memory of Thomas had been carefully folded and placed inside a wooden box at the back of his bedroom closet. Photographs, handwritten lyrics, a birthday card with only a first initial and a date. He had promised himself not to open it again. And he hadn't. Not once. But not because he had moved on. Because he couldn't survive reopening what never had an ending. Then came the knock. It was a quiet evening. Light rain tapped against the window. Eli had just boiled water for tea when he heard it. 3 soft knocks at the front door. When he opened it, he didn't expect to see her. Caroline. She stood on the porch with a travel bag and a child by her side. The boy held a stuffed bear, his rain jacket too large for his shoulders. Eli stared at them for several seconds before Caroline spoke. "I need your help," she said. "Just for a while." He stepped aside. They sat at the kitchen table, and for a long moment, The only sound was the ticking of the wall clock. Carolyn looked thinner than he remembered, tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. She explained that she had left Thomas 2 days earlier. There had been arguments, moments that made her afraid, not for herself, but for the child. Thomas had never been violent, never cruel, but something in him had grown bitter, restless, angrier than she could handle. He had started yelling, sometimes slamming doors when Liam cried too long. She needed time, space, and she didn't trust anyone else. "I'm not asking you because of the pattern," she said, eyes fixed on her tea. "I'm asking you because my son spoke your name before I ever said it out loud." Eli blinked. How? Carolyn reached into her purse and pulled out a photograph. It was crumpled at the edges. One of the old photos Eli hadn't seen since college. Him and Thomas by the lake, sunburned, smiling, fingers intertwined. "I found this in a locked drawer," she said. Liam must have seen it when he was playing hide and seek. Eli looked toward the boy, now curled on the couch with his bear. "He called you the man in the picture," Carolyn continued. "And he kept asking if you were the one who made Dad smile like that." Her voice broke then, just slightly. "I realized my son had already connected to something true, something he couldn't name, but could feel." She pulled out a folded document, a temporary guardianship form, not permanent, just until she could sort things out. She said she'd be nearby, not vanishing. She'd return. Eli hesitated. His hands trembled slightly as he held the paper. "I'm not his father," he whispered. "I know," Carolyn replied, "but you might be the only man he trusts to become one." Eli looked again toward the child. Liam had fallen asleep on the couch, one hand still gripping the bear, the other reaching toward the space beside him, as if looking for someone to fill it. And in that moment, something inside Eli moved. Not a rush of love, not a flood of meaning, just the soft, undeniable recognition of a bond he hadn't asked for, but couldn't ignore. He nodded slowly. "You can leave him with me." Caroline didn't smile. She just touched his hand once, light, respectful, then left quietly through the rain. When Eli carried Liam to the guest room and tucked him in, the boy stirred just enough to murmur, "Did you build the cabin yet?" Eli froze. "Tom." He didn't answer. He just pulled the blanket up to the boy's chin, sat beside the bed, and stared at the little face that carried echoes of a dream long gone. The cabin never happened, but perhaps something else just had. Weeks passed slowly, like fog rolling across a valley that refused to clear. Eli adjusted to the rhythms of a life he never planned for. School drop-offs, bedtime stories, lunch boxes packed with apple slices cut in the shape of stars. He learned how to braid hair on Liam's favorite stuffed bear. He learned to tell stories about forests and skyboats and kindness that lasted longer than the sun. Liam never asked where his mother was. He never asked why his father stopped calling. Children have a way of recognizing love not by blood, but by safety. In the beginning, Eli still moved like a guest in his own home. He spoke softly, cautiously, but Liam never hesitated. He followed Eli from room to room, climbed into his lap when it rained, and pointed at old drawings on the wall asking if the green cabin was real. Eli told him the truth. That once he believed it would be, but real life wasn't made of songs, and some cabins never get built. Then one Saturday, as the two of them were planting seeds in the backyard, a car pulled up on the gravel road. Thomas. He stepped out slowly, dressed in black, face paler than Eli remembered. His eyes flicked from the garden to the child crouched beside the watering can, then finally to Eli. "I want him back," Thomas said, not as a threat, not out of anger, just hollow, like someone repeating words given to him by someone else. Eli stood, wiping dirt from his palms. "You mean Liam?" Thomas nodded. "He's my son." Eli looked over his shoulder. Liam hadn't moved. He had paused, watching them both, gripping the little trowel in his hand. "You haven't seen him in weeks," Eli said. He asks for stories. He cries sometimes at night, and when he does, he calls for me. Thomas's eyes narrowed. That's not your place. Eli didn't respond right away. Then Liam ran forward. He didn't reach for Thomas. He ran straight to Eli's side, wrapped his arms around his leg, and whispered, "Please don't let him take me." The silence that followed was so deep it felt like wind had been sucked from the earth. Thomas stood completely still. For the first time, he looked not angry, but unsure. In that moment, Carolyn appeared behind him. She had arrived quietly, her presence unexpected, but deliberate. "I asked him to come," she said, "to see the difference." Thomas turned. "You said you needed time." "I did," she answered, "and I used it to watch. Liam smiles here. He sleeps through the night. He hasn't had a single nightmare." Caroline reached into her bag and pulled out another document, this one no longer temporary. "I'm signing guardianship over to Eli," she said. "You're not being replaced, but our son has made a choice." Thomas didn't take the paper. He just looked at Liam, really looked, and saw something he hadn't seen in a long time: calm. Then he nodded once, silent. Defeated, free. He left without another word. Later that night, Carolyn stayed for tea. She didn't cry. She didn't explain herself. She simply said, "You gave him something neither of us could, a home that didn't come with fear." When she left, Liam crawled into Eli's lap on the couch. "I made something for you," he said, pulling a folded piece of paper from under a cushion. It was a drawing, 3 stick figures, one tall, one shorter, one in the middle, smiling. Above them, a house, not quite a cabin, but painted in green with blue windows, a rainbow drawn above the roof. Eli's voice caught in his throat. "Who are they?" he asked, though he already knew. Liam pointed. "That's me, that's you, and that's him." When he was still happy, the boy hesitated. "I know you're not my real dad," he whispered. "But can I still call you that?" Eli pulled him close, pressing a kiss to his hair. "You can call me anything you want." That night, for the first time in years, Eli opened the wooden box in his closet. He didn't cry. He didn't read old letters. He simply added something new, a drawing, folded gently, placed at the very top. A past that shaped him, a child that chose him, a life no longer hidden. Do you believe that the family we choose can be stronger than the one we're born into? If stories like this speak to your heart, subscribe to Heart Story for more quiet truths, brave love, and endings that begin again.